Hey everyone, welcome to another video. In this video, we'll learn how to install and use a library called Ngx-Mask in an Angular application. The purpose of this library is to allow you to use masks in form input fields. So, for example, we can create a CPF input field, use a CPF mask, a phone mask, or even a currency mask. So, to use this library, we'll need an Angular application. So, I have a legacy application here, an old application I created 3 years ago called Salt Web App. So, it's a temporary authorization system application, using Angular version 14. And I'll be using this old application because in the next videos, we'll learn how to update this old application, an application with Angular 14, and we'll update it to version 20, which is the current version. And to do this update, I'm making this video first, just so I can have a third-party preview and see how the update process works, both for Angular and third-party applications. To do this, let's make a copy of this repository here on my computer, right? So, to do this, you can access the link I'll leave in the description, which is github.com/onbsj/swebp. We can go here to the code button and make a copy of this URL. I'll open my terminal here right now. So, I'm in my default folder, right, the current folder. So, I can then type the git clone command and the URL I copied. So, you need to have git installed on your machine. So, I'll clone the application. I can then access the application with the cd command and the folder name, which is Salt Web App. So, I access the folder. If I type ls here, you'll see that my Angular application is here. To use this version of Angular, I need to have Node installed. So, I have Node 23 here. I also have npm 10 here. And I also have an Angular CLI, which is the Ng application. If you look, I have an Angular CLI application here, version 20, which is the latest version. So, you'll need to have these applications and tools already installed. So, I'll also need the IDE, right? So, I'll use Visual Studio Code. So, just type code, space, period, and I'll open my ID on my screen here. I'll close the terminal and close some windows. So, I have my legacy application here. If you looked at the JSON file, you'll see that the application is an Angular application, right, version 14. Besides Angular, it's using Angular Material 14, as well as some tools here. Some libraries for saving locally to the database, TIX, and some APC, some libsar. Here's the Ngx-Mask version 14, precisely this legacy version so we can test how to create these masks. But this version 14 that we're going to install hasn't changed much. So you'll see that the next versions of Ngx-Mask you use won't have much difference. So let's access the Ngx-Mask website here. I can type Ngx-Mask in Google and I'll be taken to the npm website, look. So Ngx-Mask. Then, through this page, I can click on the Hubble Git repository. It will direct me here to the official repository of this library. So, if I looked at the end and looked here in the installation options, you'll see that this library has versions for different Angular versions. Look, we have Angular 17 or higher, we also have version 16, 15, and the version I'm currently using, which is 14. So, I'll copy this code here, npm at 14, right? And I can copy the rest of the version. I'll go back here to my IDE. I'll open the terminal in this tool here, look, terminal, new terminal, and then the built-in terminal will open. I can then paste this command here, which will be installing Ngx-Mask in the development dependencies, right, in the application dependencies. Then I can press enter. So, you'll see that it's downloading. It's already generated the node moldes, node modulos folder here. So, if I close this and reopen it, you'll see that there's already a change, which is Ngx-Mask version 14. So, let's now install all the dependencies for our project using the command npm -I press enter, and it will download all the dependencies, including Angular, Angular Core, and the libraries that depend on this application. We can also use the command ngx to run an embedded server, right? So, I'll press enter, and it will compile the application. So, it built the application here, and it's already running. So, we can access this address here. I'll press Ctrl and click on it to follow the link. It will open here in my browser, my application here, the legacy application. And I have a video here on the channel showing how I developed this application. You can see it there. I'll also leave it in the description and in the cards. I'll do the following. I'll document here in this file here too, which is a file where I put the entire history of the commands I used. So, I'll add it here at the end to say that I added this library here in version 14. So, it's a programming practice. You're always documenting what you're doing in your application. That's why I like to always use a history here to put in the RIDM what's being installed. Although in an Angular application, pack.json and lock already do this, but it's just so you remember the command in the future, in case you don't use this application anymore and want to come back and see what you did. So, we installed the Ngx-Mask library here. So, let's do the following. Let's go back here to the application page, right, the library. So, if we come up here, there's a link showing how this library works. So, we can click here and there you'll have several tutorials, right, several examples showing how to use the application. For example, if I want to create a date mask, we can use the mask attribute here, putting a kind of regular expression here, right? It's not a regular expression, but something similar here for you to format here in the data pattern. Here in front, you already have a format that will remain. So we'll use this. In addition to this mask pattern, we also have the path option, which is here at the end, look. Here in others, you also have a mask pipe. So let's see how to use both the standard mask here and the pipe. So in my application, in my Salt web application, I'll go here, look, to the teacher menu. You'll see that in the teacher menu, I have a form here. If I click the new resist button, there's a form here for you to enter data for new teachers. This application here, you see that it's giving an error here. Let's fix it now. This application is a bug in Chrome. It doesn't happen in Firefox. And when you have a form here with HTML fields, input fields, I usually have virtual fields, right? Fields that aren't rendered, which is an after and a before. And for some reason, Chrome in the newer version started having a problem rendering this field here. So let's see how to remove this here and have a field the same size as the others. Note that this form here is using the standard from my last video, which was to use Flex to create a dynamic layout. So, for example, if I delete any of these fields here, I'll delete any field here, for example, a number or a mat form field, right? I'll delete it, and you'll see that the form will expand all the remaining fields and won't be left with a gap here. So, in the last video, I demonstrated how to create a form like this here, where you also, besides the form being dynamic, right, the form is also responsive, and there's no problem with you having access on other devices. So, I'll just update this area here. But what are we going to do? I have the CPF field here, and this CPF field here isn't validated. So I can type more than a few characters, which isn't allowed in the CPF, and it's also not masked. So let's make this field here comply with the CPF standard. Pell. So let's see where this module here, teacher, is, and where this new teacher form is. Coming here to the IDE, we can go here, look, in the field, in the source folder here, right, SC, go to the app folder, go to the teacher folder here, which is the teacher module. And we have here, look, two folders that are two components, right, the data table, and forms. So, in the case of the form, so let's go to teacher forms, and here will come the code here in HTML, look, the component code. So I'll access this component here, and you'll see that here I have a form. I have several fields in this form. One of these fields, if you scroll down a bit here, you'll see that it's the CPF, Individual Taxpayer Registry, field. This field, in the Format Form field, represents this CPF field. So let's add the mask field here. So, if I come here in the input field, I can then type mask at the end and now add a CPF field, for example, a CPF mask, for example, 000. 0-00. So here's a CPF mask. Right now, it won't be working. Why? Because I added the application, I added the library, but I didn't insert it into the module, right? I didn't even call this library in my application to make this mask work. So if I save here, it will be rendered again here, it will be processed, right, built, but the application itself still doesn't work. So, for that, we'll go back here, look, in the description here on GitHub, I saw it at the end and you'll see the ways to use it for a given version of Angular. If you have an Angular 15 or higher version that already uses the standalone version, then I have a way for you to use it. And if you have a version lower than 15, which is the version that still uses Ng modules, then you'll use it this way here. So, let's use it this way here. But remember that in the next videos, we'll update this application to use it here with the standalone version, in this case here. So, I'm going to copy just this code here, which is the Ngx-Mask modules for root. So, I'm going to copy it with this code here. We're going to put it in the mods app. So, I'm going to go back here to the IDE and look for the app modes file here. And you'll see that there are several imports. I'm going to put them here at the end of the service works. I'm even going to press enter here, leaving this application like this. Put a comma here, personal enter, and paste it in this part here. So, you see, it's complaining because I didn't import them, right? So I can press this space here, look, it will automatically pull it there because I've already installed the library, right? So it did that up there, it's already added an import here. If I save it, it's giving an error here because, actually, I put it in the wrong place, right? I'll just cut it here. Actually, this parenthesis here is from the service work, right? So I don't need this comma here. I put it here outside and here I'll add it, look. So now it's in the import call, right? Of the import. So I'll save it, but it still won't work because I now need for shield. So I'll go back here, look, in the documentation, down here and it says how to add the configuration at the feature level, right? So I just copy the NX import here but mod for shield, right? So I copy it. So I want to add this option in the teachers module. So I'll go back to the IDE. I came here to the teacher module and notice that the teacher module still mentioned in the old application, there's still a teacher. So I'll access this file and in the imports here, put a comma, press enter, and paste the code. Now I also need to import this command that's here above was imported. I press Ctrl S to save. The application was rebuilt, and now my mask field here is working. If I start typing, look, application, there's a bug here. Let's see what I did wrong here. So, I'm seeing an error here, friend. So, it's probably because the field here has a number type, right? See? So this field here can't be number. Since I'm using the mask, you leave it here in the text default, because then the mask will only work with testing, only with text values, right? So I leave the type here and let's use the mask now. So I'll press Ctrl S to save, come back here again. So now if I type the text here, you'll see that it's using the mask. So, I can type any CPF value here, and it will be filled with the mask. I can use, for example, if I wanted it to be a CPF and also a CNPJ. Well, from the documentation, you can see that I can simply enter the command CPF_line CNPJ here. So, if I saved it, you would see that the application would start as a CPF. After I typed the 11 digits, it would become a CNPJ. But since this is a CPF only field, I'll leave it as is, but you can create your mask in several ways. So, I'll save it, return to what was just there, as you see in the documentation here. Let's do the following. If you save a new user here, before saving, I'll do the following. I'll go to Settings. Anyone who saw the video about this application knows that I can access my application, my SaltPP application, and I can load this fake file here, and it will load the local database. So I'll click Restore. I'll now have some fictitious values here, right? Look, for example, here. And if I go over here, look, I can click the pen here and edit. And you'll see that a field will already be filled in. See then that even if you enter it, it also automatically picks up the formula, right, or the mask. Let's do the following, then. In addition to being able to use masks, we can use pipes, in this case here in this area here that has the CPF section. And these masks, they will also be in the CPF format. To do that, then, let's access this module. This module here, in this case, is Professor Consultation. We can go here in the folder here, Professor Database, right? Look. So, I'll access the HTML file here. And if we go down here in the table section, we have the specific section that renders the CPF fields here, the CPF column. See that I'm only showing the CPF value, but we can use a pipe. So, how can I use the pipe here? I'll simply put a space between them. I'll put the pipe symbol here, which is this trailer symbol, right? The symbol on the keyboard here near the F for shift. I type the mask command here, right? The colon and between single quotes I put my mask. In this case, the CPF mask is the same mask. So the 0 values are to define that they are numbers, right? The period to define that they are periods, so the dash will appear, and the 0 also means you can only enter numbers. So if I save, let's now go back to the web part. Here you will see now, look, that the values with masks were loaded. But the problem now is that the application now doesn't show the CPF on a single line, right? Look. What I'm going to do is the following. I'm going to define a style to make this field here always get 100% of the value. So I'll go back here, I'll create a style here in front, look, a class, right? I'll call it CP. I'll save it and come here to the Professor database and CS components. And let's create a small CSS rule here, point CPF. And this rule will define the following. The minimum value, the minimum building, right, it will be 100 pixels, which I believe will fit 100 pixels there. So let's see here. If it were a little more, just increase it, but I think it will be okay. Okay, here, look, it's okay. So the minimum value here is 100 pixels, so it won't fall off with this bridge this size anymore, right? It won't be cut off anymore. So let's change other values here too, which is the following. Since there are many values here, what happens is that a scroll bar doesn't appear. So I'll add a scroll bar. In the IDE, if you look here in Styles, SS Styles, you'll see that I have a part here that is the part where this rule here renders a panel in the table, right, which is precisely a frame that surrounds this data table. So here's a scroll bar, I'll put 6 pixels here. So now we'll have a scroll bar here, it's better for the user to use. Just to finish here, I'll also here in this same CSS styles file, at the end here, I'll add the rule so that all inputs here of the type that have the date type, right, and that have the pseudo div here after rendering here, right. I'll make it have a display end to hide, and I'll say that this rule here is important. So now if I don't save and just show the form here, you'll see what's wrong here at the beginning, look. It has a larger field because it has this after rendering here. I'll even show it here in the developer options. If you come here and scroll down a bit, you'll see that there's an option here, look, there's an option here after. And this app is exactly what's causing this difference. For some reason, here in Chrome, it's making this have a value, even though that value hasn't even been defined, right? So, let's put a display in the import, so I won't save it. So now, look, if you look at the fields field now with the date type fields, right, where there's the option to use the peak, it will already be normal, it will be the same size as the other fields. To finish, then I'll just add a new resistor, right? So, I'll save it. It will ask which fields are mandatory. I'll type the CPF here, see if it fits the mask. These other fields here, I'll type randomly. Then I'll save. So, the new field has been inserted, right? New record. So, the resistor here so and so, you'll see here that it has the pipe here already formatted in the CPF standard. And you'll see here, if you edit it, it already arrives with the formatted value as well. So that was the video. In the next videos, we'll see how to update this application here, Angular 14. We'll see how to update to version 15, then 16, 17, 18, until we reach 20. And a faster way than the Angular death documentation and also a bonus. Now, I'm going to save this application here on my GitHub. So, in addition to updating Angular, we'll also be updating third-party applications, in this case, Ngx-Mask. So, that's it, that's the video. See you next time.